The oldest hunting technology on Earth costs $0 to build. Zero. It predates the bow and arrow by thousands of years. Archaeological specimens survive from 4,200 BC. The United States military still trains elite soldiers to use it. But in most American states, it is illegal for you to even learn how. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. A functional hunting rifle costs a minimum of $500. Ammunition runs $1 to $2 per round. Annual costs reach $300 to $500. And that assumes you can find ammunition at all. The system you're about to learn requires sticks, rocks, and plant fiber. Total cost? Nothing. It never runs out of ammunition because it never needed any. By the end of this video, you will know how to build 4 different traps from materials lying on the ground beneath your feet. The same traps that sustained entire civilizations through famine, winter, and collapse. The same traps your government teaches its own soldiers behind closed doors but prosecutes you for building in your backyard. To understand why you were never taught this, you have to understand what it replaced. This channel exists for one reason. Essential survival knowledge should not be locked behind a military clearance or a $1,000 survival course. Every week, we dig into the skills, the science, and the documented history that somebody decided you did not need to know. Subscribing is not about entertainment. It is about refusing to be dependent on systems that can disappear overnight. The research vault linked below goes deeper than any single video can. But everything you need to get started is right here. Let's begin where the evidence starts, 6,000 years ago, underwater. In 2007, archaeologists excavating a submerged Neolithic site at Hoogevart in the Netherlands pulled woven fish traps from waterlogged sediment. Dating confirmed them to 4,200 BC. These were not crude baskets. They were engineered funnels designed to guide fish inward through a narrowing channel and prevent escape. 6,200 years old. And the design still works today. But here is what makes the Hoogevart find more than a museum curiosity. The same basic trap architecture appears independently on the other side of the planet. The Paiute people of the Great Basin developed deadfall traps using a trigger mechanism so elegant that it requires only 4 sticks and a heavy rock. The Wapo and Pomo nations of California built their own variations. Cultures across Asia developed snaring techniques using plant fiber cordage. In New Zealand, indigenous communities engineered fish weirs across streams using the same funnel principle as Hoogevart. No contact between these civilizations, no shared blueprint. They each arrived at the same conclusion independently because the physics of trapping is universal. Gravity does not require a patent. In 1938, John Montgomery Cooper, an anthropologist at the Catholic University of America, published research that challenged a popular assumption. The figure 4 deadfall trigger. The design most survival manuals attribute to Native American origin may not be indigenous at all. Cooper's evidence suggested the mechanism might have European roots, appearing in written manuals no earlier than around 1880. Now, most survival channels will not tell you that. They repeat the romantic origin story. But the documented record is more complicated. And that complication matters because it proves something important. The trapping tradition is so old and so widespread that we cannot even trace the origin of individual trigger designs with certainty. The knowledge is older than the records. What we can trace with certainty is economic impact. The North American fur trade, built almost entirely on trapping, created cities: New York, Montreal, St. Louis, Detroit, Pittsburgh. These were not agricultural settlements first. They were trading posts where trapped furs moved from wilderness to market. The mountain men of the 1820s through 1840s were not hobbyists. They were professional trappers whose entire livelihood depended on deadfalls, snares, and steel traps. A.R. Harding documented more than 50 trap designs in his 1907 publication, Deadfalls and Snares. He described trapping not as a hobby, but as a profession that had sustained frontier communities for generations. His manual reads like an engineering textbook: specific dimensions, material requirements, trigger sensitivities. This was precise, technical knowledge passed down through practice. And it did not disappear because it stopped working. Today, much more than 35,000 indigenous people in Alaska and Canada still trap annually for primary sustenance, not as recreation, as survival. In the Siberian taiga, Russian sable trappers still use deadfall designs nearly identical to those documented by Harding over a century ago. The technology functions exactly as it always has. The only thing that changed is who is allowed to use it. So for 6,000 documented years, this was how human beings fed themselves. Then, in roughly 150 years, it vanished from mainstream knowledge. Not because it stopped working, because it was made illegal. Now, everything we have covered so far is the surface layer. The research vault linked in the description contains the complete documented record. Construction specifications for every trap type. Legal status mapped by state. Our declassified military training references. full historical source citations, caloric analysis of trapped game by species. No fluff, no filler, just the primary sources organized for people who want to go deeper. But everything you need to actually build these traps is coming in the next 15 minutes. The vault is for those who want the complete legal map, the full historical timeline, and the advanced techniques we cannot fit into a single video. Now here is where the documented record gets uncomfortable. In 1975, Massachusetts became one of the first states to restrict trapping methods through legislation. 21 years later, in 1996, Massachusetts voters passed a ballot initiative banning body-gripping traps and restricting snares. The margin was not close. 64% of voters supported the ban. 14 of 15 counties voted in favor. The trapping community was overwhelmed at the ballot box. Arizona followed in 1994 with its own restrictions. California passed Proposition 4 in 1998, banning body-gripping traps on public land. One by one, states began closing the door. Today, 13 states maintain some form of snare ban. 6 states have enacted full prohibitions on conibear-style body-gripping traps. Virginia explicitly prohibits deadfall traps by statute, not restricted, prohibited. The cumulative effect is a patchwork that does not just limit trapping, it deters learning. When the legal status varies by state, by method, by season, and by species, the average person does not study the regulations and find the legal path. They simply never learn, and that is the functional outcome whether or not it was the conscious intent. But here is where the pattern reveals itself. While states were banning these methods for civilians, the federal government was actively using them. In 1972, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service allocated 28% of its predator control budget specifically to snaring. 28%. Not a minor line item, a primary operational method. The same snares that civilians face criminal charges for setting in 13 states were a budgeted federal tool. And it goes further. The United States military's Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape program, known as SERE, teaches service members to construct deadfalls, snares, and primitive fish traps. These are classified as essential survival skills for military personnel. The exact same techniques, the exact same designs, built from the same materials found in any forest in America, taught behind secure facilities to soldiers, banned by statute for the civilians those soldiers are sworn to protect. Meanwhile, the consequences of banning these methods played out in real time. After Massachusetts restricted trapping, the state's beaver population exploded from roughly 20,000 to over 70,000. Damage complaints surged from 400 to over 1,000 annually. Flooded roads, contaminated water supplies, destroyed timber. The state then had to pay licensed professionals to address the damage that an informed public could have managed themselves. The knowledge did not just vanish from legal practice. It vanished from education. Trapping was once taught in rural schools as a practical life skill. It appeared in scouting manuals. It was part of basic outdoor competency. Today, if you want to learn these techniques, private survival schools charge anywhere from $100 to several $1,000s for courses that teach skills your great-grandparents knew by age 10. Knowledge that was once free became a luxury product. So the government banned it for you, kept it for themselves, and removed it from your children's education. Let's talk about what that costs you in dollars. A functional hunting rifle starts at $500. That is the floor. A reliable model with an appropriate scope runs closer to $800 to $1,200. Ammunition costs $1 to $2 per round. A modest practice and hunting schedule burns through $300 to $500 in ammunition per year. And that assumes stable supply chains. Assume nothing. In any sustained disruption, ammunition becomes unavailable. It is a manufactured product dependent on brass, primer compounds, powder, and industrial production. When the supply chain breaks, your rifle becomes a club, an expensive, heavy, single-purpose club. Now contrast that with a Paiute deadfall. Materials: 4 sticks and a length of cordage. Cost: $0. A simple fixed snare requires a length of salvaged wire. Cost: $0. A woven funnel fish trap requires saplings and vine. Cost: $0. Every material comes from the ground beneath your feet. No supply chain, no manufacturer, no retailer, no ammunition. Oh, and here's the force multiplier that firearms cannot replicate. One person can set and monitor dozens of traps simultaneously across a trap line. Each trap works around the clock. It does not sleep. It does not get tired. It does not make noise that alerts every animal within half a mile. You cannot patrol a forest with a rifle and match the coverage of 20 snares working silently through the night. Trapping is not a backup to hunting. It is a fundamentally different acquisition strategy. One that scales with effort, not with expenditure. What you're about to learn in the next 5 minutes took our ancestors a lifetime to develop and pass down through generations. It took roughly 1 century to erase from public knowledge. If this channel does one thing, it makes sure that knowledge survives. Subscribe if you believe it should. Before we build, I owe you the honest picture. No single trap feeds you. That is the reality. Trapping is a numbers game. You need a trap line with multiple sets checked daily. One deadfall might catch nothing for 3 days, then produce 2 squirrels in a single morning. The math works over quantity and time, not single attempts. Reading animal sign is a skill unto itself. Setting a perfect trap on a random trail produces nothing. You need to identify runs, feeding areas, water access points, and bedding zones. This takes observation and practice. Nobody masters it from a single video. The figure 4 trigger is mechanically unforgiving. The notch angles must be precise, or the mechanism either locks permanently or collapses under its own weight before an animal arrives. Expect failed attempts. Expect frustration. Expect to carve the notches 5 or 6 times before the sensitivity is right. Scent contamination is real. Human scent on a trigger assembly alerts prey animals. Experienced trappers handle components with gloves or rub them with local vegetation. Small game, particularly rabbits and squirrels, provides lean protein but is low in fat. A diet of exclusively trapped small game creates caloric deficiency over time. You need fat sources to supplement. This is documented. Ignoring it is dangerous. Fish traps built from rush degrade within approximately 3 weeks. Willow and hazel frames last significantly longer, but require more construction time. Seasonal variation matters. Spring and fall are peak trapping productivity. Deep winter reduces small game movement. High summer makes bait spoil rapidly. Those are the real constraints. Now here is how you build the traps that work within them. The Paiute deadfall. You need 4 components. A flat, heavy rock weighing approximately 5 times your target animal's body weight. A vertical post roughly 6 inches tall. A lever stick approximately 12 inches long. A toggle stick roughly 4 inches long tied to a thin cordage trigger line. Carve a slight notch near the top of the vertical post. Rest the lever stick in this notch with the rock balanced on one end. The toggle stick props against the bottom of the vertical post with the cordage stretched taut to a bait trigger. When the animal pulls the bait, the toggle releases. The vertical post kicks free, the lever drops, and the rock falls. The entire mechanism relies on balanced tension. Place it along identified animal runs near cover. Bait with whatever the target species is currently feeding on. Construction time, 10 to 15 minutes once you have practiced the notch work. The figure 4 deadfall, 3 sticks, 1 vertical, 1 horizontal, 1 diagonal, each approximately 8 to 12 inches long, depending on your rock size. Cut a square notch near the top of the vertical stick. Cut a matching square notch on one end of the horizontal stick so they interlock at a 90-degree angle. The diagonal stick has a chisel point at the top that engages a notch on the horizontal stick and a flat face at the bottom that rests against the vertical stick. When assembled correctly, the 3 sticks form the number 4 shape. The rock leans against the horizontal stick. Bait goes on the end of the horizontal stick. Animal disturbs the bait. The diagonal slips free, or the geometry collapses, the rock drops. This trigger is more sensitive than the Paiute, but harder to set. The notches must be cut precisely. Too loose, and it collapses on its own. Too tight, and the animal cannot trigger it. Construction time, 15 to 25 minutes. A simple fixed snare. You need a length of flexible wire or strong cordage. 20-gauge brass wire works well where legal. Form a small loop at one end by twisting the wire back on itself. Pass the free end through this loop to create a running noose. The noose diameter should be 2 to 3 inches for small game such as rabbit. Anchor the free end to a stake, a heavy log, or a solid branch. Position the noose at head height along an identified animal run. The animal moves through the noose, the loop tightens around the neck or body, and the animal is held by the anchor. Set multiple snares along the same trail system. Check them every 12 to 24 hours. Construction time, 2 to 5 minutes per snare. The woven funnel fish trap. Select thin, flexible saplings or long, straight branches. You need approximately 20 to 30 poles, each 3 to 4 feet long. Use an odd number. Drive them into a stream bed in a circle to form the main body, then weave flexible vines or bark strips over and under alternating poles. The over-under pattern on an odd number of poles creates a self-locking weave that tightens as it dries. Form one end into a funnel pointing inward, narrowing from an opening of roughly 8 inches down to about 2 inches. Fish swim into the wide end of the funnel, pass through the narrow opening, and cannot navigate back out. Anchor the trap facing upstream in a natural narrowing of the stream. Bait is optional, but fish, scraps, or crushed insects accelerate results. Construction time, 1 to 5 hours depending on materials and size. These traps work continuously and can be left in place for weeks if built from willow or hazel. Where deadfall construction is prohibited by your state's regulations, you can practice the trigger mechanisms legally using a box or crate in place of a rock. The mechanical principles are identical. You learn the notch work, the balance, and the sensitivity without violating wildlife statutes. Master the trigger at home. The knowledge transfers immediately when the legal context permits. 4 traps. $0. Materials from the ground beneath your feet. For 6,200 documented years, human beings fed their families with sticks, rocks, fiber, and knowledge. The archaeological record at Hogevart proves it. The Paiute, the Wapo, the Pomo, the fur traders who built 5 major cities, the mountain men who lived by it, the 35,000 indigenous people who still practice it today. All of them prove it. The 1907 Harding Manual documents it. The 1938 Cooper Research interrogates it. The United States military still teaches it to the soldiers it sends into hostile territory with nothing but their hands. And then state ballot initiatives, regulatory patchworks, and the quiet removal of trapping from public education made sure that 300 million Americans would never learn it. Whether that pattern represents deliberate policy or cultural drift, the outcome is identical. You were made dependent on supply chains, retailers, and ammunition manufacturers for a capability that a 12-year-old Paiute child possessed instinctively. That dependency ends today, not with theory. With 4 specific designs, you can build this afternoon from materials in your nearest tree line. The traps do not care about supply chains. They do not jam. They do not run out. They have been waiting in the woods for 6,000 years. Now you know how to use them. Share this video with one person who needs it. The Vault for next week goes deeper into a skill that the food industry has spent decades making you forget. You will not want to miss it.